Hey everyone, I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold here with our weekly lecture series. Tonight's lecture is titled Playing for a Win as Black in the Scotch Mieses opening. Sponsor is Anonymous. Thanks, Anonymous. But the sponsor has a message which I will read. We need to get to the bottom of this once and for all. Can Black really put up a fight in Scotch Mieses, or is it a waste of time? The answer is it's not a waste of time. So at Wikipedia, they have an article on the Scotch opening or Scotch game, which you can see here. Talk about when the opening was first played, and by who, and so forth. Now, I remember specifically in 1990, I was at the Olympiad in Novi Sad, Yugoslavia at the time. And the World Championship match was going on between Karpov and Kasparov. And Kasparov played the Scotch, which before 1990 hadn't been played in a while at the top level. And he played it twice, and he had a win and a draw. And they actually played the Mieses variation. So that made it come back into favor, and grandmasters are still playing it today. Now, knight f6, which is we're going to look at, is this Schmidt variation. Mieses is when white plays e5, which I'll show you when we get to the chessboard. And they talk a little bit about it here, the Mieses variation, named after Jacques Mieses, who was one of the first grandmasters. He actually lived a long life, but he stopped playing way before I was born, and he passed away before I was born too. He played a lot in the 1800s and a little bit in the 1900s. Okay, so let's go to the games so I can discuss the opening moves. We're going to look at it from Black's point of view because that's the topic of the lecture, is how to play it with Black. Okay, now a lot of people misunderstand openings. They think, I'm going to learn this opening and I'm going to play this opening and that's what's going to happen. And that's not what happens. What happens is two players play an opening, not one player. So if you're going to learn Black in the Scotch, you also have to be ready for the Italian game, the Four Knights, the Ruy Lopez, the King's Gambit, the Vienna, and other Danish Gambit, center game, lots of different openings. But this lecture concentrates on having Black in the Scotch. And now in this position, some grandmasters play knight f6, which is the topic of our lecture, and some play bishop c5, which is what I usually play when I get this position, which I don't get very often. Okay, so knight f6. Now again, half the time people play knight c3. That's a very common move. And the other half, they play knight takes knight. That's the topic of our lecture, and e5. And this is the Mieses variation of the Scotch, where white takes on c6 and plays e5. Okay, Black plays queen e7, white plays queen e2, unpinning the pawn and threatening the knight, defending the pawn, knight d5, and h4. And in this lecture, we're going to look at h4 and c4. c4 is explosive. h4 puts it in h. h4 is a modern move. And the first game we're going to look at with h4 is a game Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, who we just did Great Players of the Present recently, against Fabiano Caruana. This was in a playoff Rapid 2023. So this game's 2 years old from now. If you watch this video in 10 years, then it's 12 years old. Okay, And h4 does two things. The bishop can go to g5 now, and the rook can lift and go to h3. Sometimes white does one, sometimes white does the other, sometimes both. Okay, f6. Always play f6. And h4 line, it turns out f6 is the best move. That's why Fabi plays it. So you got to be careful. When f6 is the best move, you got to watch it. Okay, c4 attacking the knight. Bishop a6 pinning the pawn to the queen. You can't take the knight because you lose your queen. I guess you could, but it's be bad. Okay, rook h3. Put it in h. Very unusual move in the opening. Knight b6, attacking the pawn on c4. Knight d2, defending the pawn. Long castles. Rook a3, one of the points of rook h3. Bishop b7. And knight f3, defending the e-pawn finally. Queen b4 check. Now, if white plays bishop d2, we can take the b-pawn, threaten both rooks. It's a funny fork. So king d1. It's not easy to suggest a better move for white than king d1. If you play queen d2, I can trade queens, and then your rook is attacked on a3 by my bishop. So king d1 is probably forced. d5, trying to open up the center where the white king is with the black rook. Takes on passant. Bishop takes. King c2, getting out of the line of the rook here. Oh, I'm supposed to do left. Yeah. I'm doing the wrong. Yeah, there we go. I wanted the green arrow. Okay, king c2, rook e8, and you can see black has all of his pieces developed, and white's pieces are not as developed. Bishop e3, developing a bishop. c5, unleashing the latent potential of the bishop. Rook d1. Rook e4, threatening the c-pawn. You can't play b3 because the rook is hanging on a3 then. So rook c3 is forced. Queen a4 check. King to b1. Always play king b1. Knight takes c4. Knight takes c4 takes advantage of the queen on e2, which is overworked. It's defending c4 and it's defending the rook. So if you take on c4 and I take and you take, I have queen takes rook check. If you take on c4 and play b3, which looks good, then I can play rook b4, pinning the pawn. So he played b3 immediately. Knight a3 check. Queen a5. Black won a pawn. Queen d2. Rook to e8, doubling up on the bubble up. Bishop d3, rook b4. Bishop takes h7. MVL wins his pawn back, but at what cost? Knight b5, threatening the rook. Rook takes c5. The idea is, if you take the rook, I have queen d7 check, and queen takes rook on e8. So he plays queen a3 check. Rook takes b3. Exclam. Former muscle. Takes. King c1. Check. Queen b2. Takes. And black is up a pawn now. Black has two passed pawns on the queen side. MVL goes into the endgame since his king is no good. And black is just a pawn up. MVL tries to get counterplay with his rook. Now he's up 2 pawns. And the rest of the game was easy because he's 2 pawns up. And white resigned because the rook is attacked. And if the rook moves vertically, you take the bishop. If the rook moves to b5, then king c6 wins, and the rook's trapped. So after knight b7, MVL resigned. A win for Caruana. A win against the Scotch. Very complicated game where black castled queenside and white played king d1, king c2, king b1, pretending to castle queenside. Pretending is fun. Okay, next game is in the same line. It's Jan Nepomniachtchi versus Levon Aronian. This was a blitz game played in 2020. They played this same opening because that's what this lecture is about. And h4. Very strong players, Jan and Levon. Levon played f6. That's what we're talking about. c4, bishop a6, rook h3. This is the same as in Fabi's game. In this position, Fabi played knight b6 in the last game that we looked at. This game, Levon took on e5, bishop g5. So there's two reasons to play h4 for white. One is to play bishop g5, which he just played. The other is to play rook h3, which he played previously. So white's getting all of his stuff in for h4. But is it good enough? Knight f6, rook e3, attacking the e pawn, d6. Queen f3, attacking the c pawn, queen d7, knight c3, bishop e7. Black's a pawn ahead, bishop d3. White has compensation. Black has doubled pawns and an isolated pawn. Excuse me. Short castle, bishop f5, bishop e6 check. The king tucks itself away on h8. Queen h3, bishop c8, getting rid of the nice bishop on e6, h6, and f4. White sacrifices a piece to attack black's king. Black is pretty wary of taking the bishop because after hg, the h line is open. And the king can't leave the h file, excuse me, because the queen on e6 defends g8. So opening the h file is very risky. So Levon played e takes f4, rook e2, bishop d8. Let's trade queens. No, I don't want to trade queens. Please, let's trade queens. No, I don't want to trade queens. And then black plays a good defensive move, knight h7. The rook defends f4 now. Finally, black takes the piece. And black is up a piece. White doesn't really have much attack. f3, always play f3. Rook takes because of the pin. But we just take the rook. And white's down a rook. And white's knight is hanging. And black's pawn is queening. And so forth. And Jan resigned with white. Another win for black against the Scotch. And I want to go back and talk about where the game took a turn from the other game that we looked at. In this position, in Fabi's game, Fabiano played knight b6 against MVL. This game, f takes e5 was played. Black was a pawn up, and he never looked back. So back to the drawing board for Jan. Jan was a pawn down, never got his pawn back. Then he kept sacrificing material to try to, get some attack against black's king. Like here, he could play bishop takes f4 and not sacrifice a pawn. But he tried, and he failed miserably. The lesson is never try. Very smooth win for Levon, who lately has been having a resurgence. This was in 2020 when he was still really, really good. Which he is now. Okay, now there's another variation that we need to look at. The first game we're going to look at is Jan Smeets versus Michael Adams. I've never played Michael Adams. I've played in tournaments with him. We never got paired. And I played Jan Smeets once in the UAE, and I lost. No. Michael Adams, classical king pawn player for both sides for his whole career. Now, the older move, since h4 is rather new, is c4, which is explosive. Here, black has two ideas. Black can play knight b6 right away, or black can play bishop a6, which we're going to discuss in this lecture. So the difference is white's not playing h4 in this variation. And I want to show you something grandmasters do when they're not playing, when they're going to draw the game. This is a grandmaster draw that's been known for at least 50 years. Queen e4, unpinning the c pawn. So now white's threatening c takes d. Knight f6. You can't take the knight because your queen's hanging. You can't move the queen away from your e pawn. You can't play queen e3 because knight g4 wins the pawn because of the fork. And you don't want your pawn pinned, so you play queen e2. Then knight d5 because the knight's attacked, and so on. And draw. That's a forced perpetual that some grandmasters will partake in if they don't want to play. Okay, but we're not seeing that in this lecture. I just showed you so you had the information. So for example, if you have the black pieces and you don't want to draw, you have to win, and your opponent wants to draw, then they're going to play queen e4 here and try to do that repetition. Okay. So white plays for the win with b3, defending the c pawn. These are games where white's not playing h4 right away. Castles, bishop b2, queen g5. Now that the bishop is on b2, g5 is available for the black queen. I think typically white plays g3 here, so the bishop stays on c1. Queen f3, unpinning the c pawn. So now white's threatening pawn takes knight. Bishop b4 check. King d1. This is the second game out of 3 where white's played king d1. He didn't do very well the first game. Knight f4. Now if white chooses to play bishop c1, pinning the knight, we have queen takes e5, attacking your rook in the corner and unpinning our knight. So white plays h4, put it in h. Queen h6, keeping defensive the knight. g3, knight e6. And although white has successfully pushed black's pieces backwards with pawn moves, white doesn't have a lot of development. King's on d1, the black rook is on the d file, and all of black's pieces are developed. Bishop c1, trying to get the queen. Queen g6, h5. Queen c2 check, confusing the audience. And you're the audience. No, he actually did play that. That's right. Wondering what he would do after bishop to d3. I guess f5 is fine. Then if bishop takes, I can move my queen back. Also possible is knight d4. Okay, so he played queen c2 check, knight check, knight takes, and then king e4. So if they were playing king of the hill, then Smeets would have won. Now Michael Adams played a brilliant move in this position. It looks like the knight is trapped. And it looks like you have to play knight e1, which is not really where you want your knight because, you know, it can get captured later. But Michael Adams played a brilliant move here. Knight takes e5. Now, let's see if you at home can pause your video and try to find the idea. What is the idea after king takes knight, which was not played? What is black going to do in this position? Pause the video and try to figure it out. Okay, we're back. Hopefully some of you got it. Bishop e7 with the idea of bishop f6 check. And white has to move their king somewhere. I'll say e4. Could move somewhere else. And then knight c3. And then rook b1. And black, bishop c3, rook b1. And black has successfully won a pawn by taking the e5 pawn. So that's really nice. Bishop e7 retreat, bishop f6, and the rook has no defense. So he played h6, put it in h. The point of h6 is if you take it, then I take, bishop e7 doesn't threaten bishop f6 anymore because the g pawn's gone. So that's the point of h6. Knight g4, threatening knight takes f2 check. hg, rook g8, king f5. If white takes on h7, black has knight f6 check, forking the king and rook. So he played king f5, rook takes, f3, never play f3. I wonder who won the game. Knight f2, bishop c5, and black is up a pawn, and white's king is exposed. Bishop h6, attacking the rook, developing a piece. Rook g6. Knight d2, completing development. Bishop d4, attacking the rook. Bishop g5, attacking black's rook. Rook e8. Rook takes knight, always sack the exchange. Rook e5 check, and now white resigned. If white plays king f4 or g4, I can take the bishop, and I'm threatening both rooks. So black's going to win a whole rook. So white resigned. White's king never got safe. White's pieces never coordinated well. So that was a crushing victory for Michael Adams against Jan Smeets. Now we'll look at the game I played Smeets. No, we're not going to look at that game. That game had the opposite result. Frankly, terrible. Okay, last but not least, we have a game between Macieja, Bartlomiej Macieja versus Anatoly Karpov. This was in a Warsaw Rapid tournament in 2003. Let's see. Karpov was born in 1951, so he would have been 52 years old, give or take, during this game. And Macieja probably was very young at this time. Although Macieja's rating was 2634, so I guess not. He's a coach now somewhere in Texas. Okay, so Karpov's black. Okay, this is like our starting position of the lecture, basically, in the Mieses variation. Okay, so Macieja plays b3, which we saw in the last game. Long castle. g3. In the last game where Michael Adams won, we saw bishop b2, queen g5. Now we're seeing g3, which is the main move. Then g5, black wants to play bishop g7, and he wants to stop white from playing f4 and getting connect 4. Remember, don't let your opponent get connect 4. So g5 is a normal kind of move in this variation. Bishop a3 attacking the queen. Knight b4. Black doesn't want to trade bishops. Black wants to play bishop g7 and target the e5 pawn. Excuse me. Bishop back to b2. Bishop g7. Bishop to g2. Everybody fianchettos except for this bishop. Lonely bishop on a6 isn't fianchettoed. Knight d3 check, confusing the audience. A brilliant tactical move from Karpov. Queen takes, bishop takes e5. Bishop takes e5. So what happens on queen e2? I guess I just take this and then play rook e8 and then check and then takes. And black's up a pawn. No, black's not. Yeah, black is up a pawn. Seven's one more than 6. And he has the 2 bishops. What else? So he took the bishop, sacrificing the rook on a1. Then castled, defending his knight. King b8, defending the pawn on a7. Let's go back, because that tactic was really complicated. Knight d3 check. We has to take it. Bishop takes e5. Yeah, we're threatening discovered check and take the bishop. So you have to take. I wonder if it was better if he goes into the pawn down endgame. The ending that I was showing you guys earlier. Knight c3. Bishop b2. Maybe this is just lost because he's down a pawn. Probably better than what he did. A brilliant tactic from Karpov. Now, you could take on a7, but I take with check. And then I check again. And then play bishop b7. I don't know where the king goes. And then white doesn't really have an attack here. Queen can't get there by himself. Or by herself. Okay, so white sacrificed the exchange and a pawn. King b8, knight c3. Macieja's chasing around Karpov's queen. Queen takes g5. Now black's up in exchange, but black's pawn structure is pretty bad. Rook e8. Queen f5. Karpov says, let's trade queens and go into the winning endgame. And his opponent says, no, we're not going to do that. Yay, Karpov fianchettoed his last bishop. Then Karpov starts pushing the kingside pawns, opening up white's king. Then he knight's overworked. It's defending the rook and the g pawn. And it says b5 and then it says 0-1. So I'm guessing white lost on time. But I could take the pawn either way. And b5 doesn't make a lot of sense. Like bishop takes, you can't play a4 because I just take it. And pawn takes is good too. So it's possible white played b5 and resigned. But I'm guessing white played b5 and then Karpov called his flag. Because it was a rapid game. But that was pretty tactical for a rapid game. There were a lot of tactics involved. But I want to go back to bishop take to knight d3 check. Wow, what a move. Also, I don't like bishop b2. White played bishop a3 and black pinned his own knight. I guess the idea is white can't develop the knight now on b1. Knight d2, knight c2 check. Or knight c3, I could still play knight c2 check and get the 2 bishops. I guess white wanted to develop his knight, but he can't. That's why he played bishop b2. But then bishop a3 seems like it just loses the tempo. And then knight d3 check is brilliant. A brilliant game from Karpov. Okay, let's go back over the opening so we know what the opening is. Okay, it's the Scotch. d4. Takes. This is the Scotch. Of course, white has many moves in this position. White can play bishop c4, bishop b5, knight c3. And after d4, some people play the Scotch gambit, bishop c4, or the Goring gambit c3. And in this position, some people play knight c3. There's a lot of games with knight c3 also. And then in this position, we looked at 2 games with h4. And we looked at 2 games with b3. g3, we had 1 game. The other game with Michael Adams was against Smeets. Smeets played bishop b2, queen g5. So bishop a3, bishop b2, back to the drawing board, because knight d3 check is too strong. I'm not sure what else white can play here to stop knight d3 check. Probably developing the knight to c3. But you obviously didn't see knight d3 check, because who could see that? The answer, Anatoly Karpov. And then Karpov's up material, and white doesn't really have a lot for it. Now in this position, I was wondering if white should take and then take on c6. But I guess this is a winning endgame also. I'm not sure why he didn't do that. It wins a pawn, so I would have done it. I guess he didn't want to trade queens, so he played queen c2. He was hoping he'd get an attack against Karpov's king, but he never really got an attack against Karpov's king. Karpov got an attack against his king, so it just didn't work out. It's a rapid game. And after b5, it says 0-1. So I assume white either lost on time, which is what I'm guessing, or white played b5, then resigned. Usually you don't move, hit the clock, and then resign. It's just like an unusual, it happens, but it's not normal. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I want to thank our sponsor, Anonymous. If you'd like to sponsor a lecture, contact my wife, Karen. Her details are in the description of the video. The name of the video is Playing for a Win is Black in the Scotch Mieses. I want to thank our sponsor again, who's Anonymous. We got to the bottom of it, and black was doing well. Black gets good chances in these games. There's a lot of games in the Scotch. This is just one variation. And before we go, I want to let you know that this is the starting position of the lecture. Is c4, bishop a6. And please like and subscribe and leave a comment. It really helps out the channel tremendously when you do that. Try to leave a normal comment, like I liked the lecture, I didn't like the lecture was too long, it wasn't long enough. Not like comment. You know what I mean? Say something. You have a voice. And if you want to sponsor a lecture, you can do it. Just contact my wife, Karen. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you guys next week with more lectures. I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold. Bye.